invite you to All Things Recovery with KFXB on the Connect segment. And today we've got a very special guest with us. Her name is Gwen Kirchhof, and I want to thank Gwen for being on our show. Thank you, Gwen.
It's a pleasure, Michelle.
You bet. We've known one another and worked in the social arena, but she's got a very, very special project she's working on today. And I thought she'd be a great guest for everyone to listen to. It's a new project that people can help support. And you can find out more about what she's doing through this show. And also, if the Lord puts it on your heart to give a donation at the end of the program, I think it'd be a great thing to do to help the project that she is initiating. So, Gwen, just let us know, start out and talk about the Almost Home for Men.
Almost Home has been in the community about 11 years, sheltering homeless men.
Okay.
And after all these years, we started to rethink, what are we seeing after our exit interviews? Who are the people that we are really serving, and how are things changing? And when we started looking into this, we found that there were so many homeless men coming to our door with children, and we could find no place to put them. There was no place to send them. The closest is Sioux City, Iowa, which is 4 hours away.
Oh my. So Gwen, how rare is this concept?
It is very rare. When we started investigating this type of specialty shelter, we found that there were a few in Canada, one in Arkansas, one in Texas, and then of course the one that I mentioned in Iowa, and possibly one in Los Angeles. But if you Google it and you start looking, you find out that it's women and children segregated in one area, and then the father in another. Or maybe it's a whole family, but there is no place that a man who has custody of his children can go.
What about if a man, say he gets, this sounds crazy, but I suppose I was thinking about men, how a lot of times they'll get children for a certain amount of time, you know?
As long as they have custody.
Okay, custody is one of the distinctions.
Yes, we're going to be very critical about that for the fact that, I hate to say it, but nowadays you don't know if they have kidnapped children, are they trafficking children? Wow. So we will need to know that they have full custody, physical custody, or at least, you know, the partial custody. I'm
going to back you up a little bit, Gwen. How did you get into the social arena? What caused you to get into it? What was the impetus? And, you know, where did you get the passion for it?
I had often wondered how it compares between homeless women and homeless men. Because I had often heard, you know, when you're in college and when you're in Health and Human Services Administration, that type of thing, and you see that women have such a great network. But you wouldn't see a lot for a man. As a matter of fact, when you think of homeless men, one of the first things you think about is, you know, what's wrong? It's got to be a character flaw. Men are providers. Men are protectors. Men should not be homeless. There has to be something wrong.
That's a good point.
But then we did find out that there were, you know, quite a few things, quite a few barriers, and that's how you and I got to know each other, because of not only brain health issues, but the substance abuse. And as we've had so many conversations, substance abuse is a brain health disorder.
Yes, it is.
It is an addiction. You know, they can have addictions, and an addiction is a brain health problem.
What people don't realize, it's in the DSM-5 manual, okay? Mental health care manual for psychiatrists and people in the medical field to diagnose people. Co-occurring is also, I'd say probably 80% of them have co-occurring disorders, and they have effects from being on the drugs and alcohol. So what you're saying is very true. People don't realize how much of a mental health issue this is, and I'm really glad you brought that out.
Thank you. Thank you. I try to be an advocate for that. I really do, to be the voice, because what we see. I'm going to say average. We average probably when we were housing the single homeless men, 90 to 95 a year. And last year we had 91 men, and only 4 did not have a brain health issue or a substance abuse.
Wow, wow.
Only 4.
Gives you an idea. Well, and that's the big reason why they were homeless and
Yes.
and didn't have money, etc. So it's interesting you say it. I just was reading the other day. It calls substance use disorders or addiction with illicit drugs, whatever. They call that a community disease.
Oh.
Because it affects every sect of society. If it's business, it affects the ability to employ, health care, crime. I mean, it's just family relationships. It's everywhere. And people, you know, I sometimes feel like people just really, really don't understand how big of a deal it is, how much it's hurting our nation. I think you'd have to put it in the top 3 problems in our nation, if not in the top 2.
Oh, the burden alone on all of our social service agencies,
Yes.
you know, our hospitals. I just think when someone who is at our shelter may come and present that they are on drugs, overdosing, or they may say, I feel like I'm going to kill myself. What do? We call the police department, and they take them to the psychiatric ward at the hospital.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, this is an everyday occurrence, you know, sometimes.
Or,
yeah,
that's a good point. Or they end up, if they're on substance use disorders, they may get stopped by the police, and then they get arrested, and then they end up in jail, and then they end in corrections. And then they start out, and they've got more mental health issues.
Yes.
And it's just this vicious, vicious cycle that we see all the time, and people just don't, you know, if you want to give, folks, you know, even in my org, okay, what Gwen's asking, please give. Look up Operation Empower, look up Almost Home. If you want a cause, you know, you're not talking about a few people. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying, and then how many hundreds of thousands that are affected? It may be 1 million people.
Oh, and what
more.
I'd like to bring in is the fact that now we have the children also that we want to be housing. And can you imagine how unstable their lives are and the unsafe environment?
It's true.
And as we were looking into the possible type of families that we would be taking in, we found, you know, of course, there's ones where the mother dies and the father gets depressed and starts drinking or drugs. You know, I can see that. But we've also heard of where the father was working and the mother was in charge of finances. And while the father was working, mom had a drug issue, and she started using, you know, emptied all of their accounts. And in one horrific case, the person, this is what the father told us, the mother was trafficking the children.
Oh my goodness.
While he was at work.
Today's society with one parent families and drugs and alcohol, and knowing when somebody's addicted, all they care about is getting that drug.
Yes.
They, even to the point they'll obsess over that addiction, and people think, oh gee, they could stop. No, they can't stop because they're addicted.
Yes.
That's why they can't stop. And it's almost like, you know, getting caught up in something, drug into something in a prison, and you can't get out.
No, they just spiral. They spiral out of control, and
they deal with fear. They deal with paranoia.
Yes.
You know, they deal with depression because it's like, how am I ever going to overcome this addiction? You know, and then they deal with the stigma of society. Oh, well, they could just, you know, they don't have to get, well, the fact is it happened, and the fact is they need help. They desperately need help.
Yes.
And that's why the organization I'm leading and what Gwen is doing, we're there to help these folks. That's what we want to do, right?
Exactly.
Amen.
Exactly.
So how are you going to help these men and women, or these children, I should say, men with children, on their journeys?
Well, we have always felt that we've been very good at getting the homeless men living wage employment. by breaking down the barriers. And the barriers we start with first are their physical shape. Often they're chronically ill.
Yes.
Then we go into the brain health issues. And so we have them evaluated on that. We also go into, family history. Was there abuse of any kind? Usually there has been.
Yes.
Often the homeless that we are helping have been homeless themselves as children. And so this is just repeating. So this was part of our impetus. If we could get the children and get them stabilized,
yes,
and the father also, and have, parenting. Part of our program is you will have to attend parenting classes.
That's good.
And so we're hoping that we can intervene and change these children's future. So it's all about the kids. It's all about the children.
So Gwen, what are you folks going to do when it comes to substance use disorders?
Well,
refer them out?
Yes, we have to refer them out because there aren't enough.
Yeah, you have to have quite a huge staff in order to undertake that.
And you need professionals.
Yes.
What we will be doing is a lot of case management. So that is finding out the stories, making the appointments, getting them there. People don't think about this either. The transportation. Just getting them there.
That's huge.
That's huge. It is so huge. And I know some people say, well, you can do it on Zoom. Some people do not respond to the Zoom. They need to have actual meetings. Also, we found that when they were in supportive groups like AA or NA, they worked best when they were in a group.
Right.
A group setting.
Yes.
And they need to stay away from the people they used to be with.
Right. They need healthy relationships.
Yes.
They need to find new and healthy relationships.
Yes. And healthy lifestyle behaviors, and that's what we try and do.
That's wonderful. That's awesome. So you'll be doing a lot of referrals, and like you said, an evaluation, you'll be getting that, and then probably a physical.
Yes.
So that they have all of that, and I'm sure you're going to have lots of rules.
Very stringent rules. I have to admit, I did go and visit the shelter for men with children in Sioux City.
Wonderful.
And I was impressed. We have always known that a structured living environment helps.
Yes.
With our men. And so when I went there, one of the first things I asked was to see their policies and procedures. And where some people may think it could be very strict to say, we are an absolute, we're a dry facility. We will not allow drugs on site. There will be a curfew.
Yep.
All of this, but we have found that structure helps.
Yes.
And they have found the same thing.
Well, it's very, the deal with the structure is that they feel safe.
Yes.
If you give even a child parameters, even though children don't like to follow it all the time, but parameters in like a two-parent family, this is a certain time they go to bed. This is you wake up and you go to school. You do your homework. Those are all structural issues.
And we're going to stress family meals, family activities.
That's wonderful.
And we will be working with parents as teachers. That is a relationship that we're partnered with. Not everybody grew up in the most wonderful family. It's such dysfunctional settings again that they may have come from. So we want to teach them, what's a family, and how do you make family ties? How do you make a family story, a good family story?
That's good. That's very, very good.
Cherished memories, that type of thing.
Well, I'm sure you're going to help them make that story.
Oh, that's part of it. And there again, with our case management, but also with having some of our volunteers or interns. When you hear about children that have never had a birthday party or, things like that, that you just take for granted.
Yeah. Christmas gifts.
Christmas gifts.
just knowing that somebody's always going to be there for
Mm-hmm.
you. How many families do you hope to help at one time, Gwen?
We hope to have 5 families at a time. We are very close to opening our first 2 shelter units, I will call them. And then we have the space for 3 others that we're raising money to build.
Okay,
So we do have the space on site.
You just got to put up the walls and the beds and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it all costs money to help people.
Yes, and we're talking about, we are located at St. John's Lutheran Church, and it's right on site, and it's the area that used to be classrooms. It's an older area.
Sunday school rooms. Right?
And well, this actually was a large classroom area.
You know?
A lot of people don't know that Wartburg Seminary started at St. John's, the classes, before it was built.
Well, on Garfield Avenue, I believe there is a stone there, probably around Scott Potter's buildings, that actually say that at one time that's where Wartburg College started, actual building there, if I recall right.
Oh, they had classes at St. John's.
But I bet I could see that. You know, it's funny you say that, because when I was a little girl, we went there, and I remember this big basement. We walked down step, and there was a big basement there, and they must have got involved with kids then. It was right across from Prescott School.
Well,
yeah.
And I have to put in a little plug for our open closet, because that's where we distribute clothing to those in need. And I would say it's the working poor that we see. It's women working 2 and 3 jobs.
That's wonderful.
That type of thing. And before COVID, it was not unusual to have 14,000 visits in a year. With COVID, we're asking that the families would just send 1 person. We've had to, change what we
Par
do.
it down.
But we do partner with 11 schools, 10 elementary and 1 middle school, to provide brand new underwear.
Wow.
The nurses would tell us when children became ill, they would come to the nurse's office, they had no underwear.
Wow.
I mean, you can't believe when you hear some of the stories.
I would imagine.
And so we provide underwear, socks, coats, snow pants, and boots. And we raise the money in order to purchase the new underwear, and that type of thing. The open closet also helps women, many who are in recovery, or battered women that are starting jobs. And we have clothing and brand new undergarments for them also.
That's amazing. And it's not just, I mean, the closet itself serves all kinds of ladies and men and all the clothing that is donated.
Yes, it's all donated.
But what you're saying is you go above and beyond that and actually purchase brand new clothing and boots and whatever for children in the schools.
Yes, and we also purchase steel-toed boots for men or women that are going into trades like construction trades, welding, at some of the warehouses, recycling, that type of thing, because we don't want a pair of shoes to keep you from your job. They're in a catch-22. You can't have the job unless you have the shoes. They don't have a job, so they can't afford to buy the boots.
I remember on numerous occasions men that would come under our roof that they needed steel-toed boots so they could start that first job. And one of the goals in the social arena, if someone has a job, well then they can maintain housing, they can maintain a family,
they can have health insurance,
and they can have health insurance if they can find a good job. So it answers a lot of problems, I'd say.
And there again, we're going to get right back to the community, because they're going to be viable, participants in our community. Yes. Not a drain on our social services. Yep. I mean, it's just healthy neighborhoods. It's healthy neighborhoods.
Yeah, and a win-win. That's wonderful. Let me ask you, how in your history of working in this arena, Gwen, how would you say that substance use disorders affect your patrons? And how do you feel like substance use disorders will affect the men with children?
I see men who have such potential, young men, come in.
Because they're young.
They're young. They're
and
young.
They're strong.
They're young. They're strong. They have some great ideas, and then they get hooked.
and experience, because they've worked a bunch of jobs. Even with the SUDs, they've worked jobs. So they come in to your place, and just like they're going to come into mine, and they're going to have a lot of experience. I've seen them working with me even through corrections.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Totally amazing.
The resources.
But otherwise, they're just...
No purpose.
No purpose, no purpose. And hopeless.
Yeah.
It's the hopelessness that affects me.
Yeah, and the depression.
Yes, yes.
And that's why you have over 40,000 suicide deaths a year in America. I imagine next year will be even more. They just keep, it's like substance use disorders, they just keep going up.
Yes.
Suicide just keeps going up. Domestic abuse, sex trafficking just keeps going up. So where does it end, and what do we have to do to change it? I mean, every project is essential. It's just essential.
And I think we have such a lack of recovery beds in Dubuque. We really do.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. And because what we see is when some of the men come from incarceration where they become clean while they were in jail.
Yes.
And then they're awaiting their trial or whatever. And so they were coming to almost home. We were almost like a halfway house for quite a few. And there, we could keep them clean because they were not with
their friends.
Their friends.
It's a safe place.
Yes.
It's just like ours, Manassas House, Salvia.
Yes.
We do the same thing. We deal with probation officers, and they come out of corrections, and they're safe. And there are a lot of times if they do leave, it's not safe any longer.
True, true, absolutely true.
That was really revelatory to me about a safe place. When somebody comes into Manassas or Salvia and they say, I want to stay here because it's a safe place, I feel safe. Well, I can't imagine in my lifetime not feeling safe. Can you?
I can't, and then I have to shift gears and think not only about the man necessarily saying that, but children.
More so.
More so. You know, you always, I think of my childhood, and you want to feel safe.
It's part of being a child.
Yes.
That's part of a good childhood, is feeling safe so that you can grow and be nurtured and grow up and be healthy, mentally and spiritually, physically, in every way. So that safe thing. I remember one time I had a gal, actually I consider my first tenant, and we did an interview. It's actually on our website. And she said, there's something said about feeling safe.
Yes.
And that's the first time somebody said, it's something about feeling safe. It's an incredible feeling. And not only that, it's healing.
Very healing.
Yeah. Being safe is healing, So substance use disorders severely impact people's lives, end up with mental illness that they never had before. And it snowballs. Well,
it does, and it also affects their physical health.
Yes.
Because of the unhealthy lifestyle. They're not eating, they're not sleeping, the hygiene, all of that.
What do you hope, Gwen, what do you hope to turn around with the children? What impact do you think your project is going to have with the children? What are your plans with the children? It's important.
I think what we are hoping, like I said, that we can give them a stable, safe environment, and that this will continue. We want to make sure when men come in, it's going to be like a 30-day emergent shelter.
Okay.
Then if they agree to go on with the parenting classes and all the different classes that we expect them to attend, then they can stay on for like 6 months, 9 months, or if they're in classes for jobs. But just like what we did with the men with Pathway to Employment, you have to show progress and show that you are vested in this.
Yes, absolutely.
And there again, the structure. So we're hoping that we can prepare the men to be a family, be able to handle the life, to be caring of their children, supporting their children. That's another thing, to be the father.
To be the authority in the home.
Yes.
And be responsible authority.
Yes.
That'll actually protect and take care of the kids.
And that they can sleep at night.
Yes.
And get to school. That's the other thing, this disruption
That's a good point.
of the school.
Uh-huh.
And in our conversations with the school district, we found out, you know, like I said, we were so fortunate. Like I said, we're right across from Prescott Elementary, so if it's an elementary school, they can go there. And if the father finds a job within Dubuque and they move to another part of Dubuque, they can still be transported to that school, so they have that stability of being in the same school for the whole year.
I think that alone is a big thing. I imagine with the children, you're going to feed them, make sure they've got the clothing they need.
Yes, we have that at the open closet.
You do. It's
so
just a great transition.
We're close to the library. We're across the street from a playground.
It's when you want to help people, it's really best to be where they're at.
Yes.
And that's it's a great point of origin for where you're located on 9th and White.
Well, and if the father, if he may need to learn to cook or do different things until he can do that, you know, the meals are right downtown.
That's true.
Yes. The services, everything is downtown in the neighborhood, and that's why we're at a perfect location. But that's also why they found out about us, because the men were coming originally to the open closet for clothing, and then they'd say, "Do you have a place we can stay?"
Wow.
I'm living in my car with my children, or we're camping.
Wow. What are some of the goals you want to see when, we don't have a lot of time left here, but what are some of the goals, Gwen, you want to see when they exit?
I want to see that the father has a stable job. I want to see that the apartment that they go into, or the housing that they rent, whatever, will be safe and quality.
And decent.
Decent. I mean, we see people that come in that have no hot water.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Holes in the walls, holes in the floors. No, we want that there's going to be the stability, and again, it's safety, stability.